Hey, welcome back to 5G guys. I'm Dan McVaugh,
And I'm Wayne Smith.
and we are here on a bittersweet day to celebrate the last episode of 5G guys and talk about all the things we loved about doing the show and talk about why we're moving on, and the podcast is going to come to an end after this episode. But so I think with that, Wayne, let's talk a little bit about what's going on and what we loved about the last, it's been 3.5 years, I believe, since we started. We launched our first episode in August of 2021.
Yeah, crazy how time flies. I mean, 2021 to today, a lot of things have happened in the world. And a lot of things have happened, for us in our episodes. How many total episodes do we have, Dan? 65, 66?
67, I believe.
67. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Wow. Yeah. To your point, it's a bittersweet, you know, um, time to reflect and to celebrate. I think there's a little bit of both there. If I'm jumping in and being completely honest, I was nervous as hell doing the podcast to begin with. I never thought that, even with so many years in the industry, that I had a voice that was worth listening to. But now looking back, I mean, I went down my memory lane today, went through all the episodes, and there were some amazing guests. One that I will speak of, and you might say, also, is Marty Cooper,
Yeah.
and the father of the cell phone. And I think when you work somewhere and you look back over the history of it, you're like, wow, that was a long time ago. And in our industry, whether it's the cellular industry that we're in, has matured significantly since Marty made that first call all those years ago. And we've been a part of culture and society for the last 20 some years. And it's an amazing accomplishment to participate and be just a participant on that
Uh,
journey.
Marty's a great example of some of the amazing figures in our industry that we've been able to have as guests. He himself is, I would almost put Marty on the Mount Rushmore of wireless telecommunications in terms of one of the most important figures of technology innovation, and even since the development of inventing that portable cell phone when he was at Motorola, he continues to have such a big impact. And it was great to hear from him about the things he's doing today to help push the industry forward, help work on policy changes with the FCC. Tap into just his wealth of knowledge and the wisdom that he has that we can all learn from. And there was plenty of other guests that we had like that. We had Pete Bernard from Microsoft. We had Ignacio Contreras from Qualcomm, probably one of the largest chip manufacturers for cell phone chips in the world. Art Pregler from AT&T, and just the amazing things that they're doing over there around robot dogs and things to help make the world around us safer, that a lot of people don't even realize is going on in behind the scenes.
Yeah, like some of the stuff that Art talked about, the robot dogs and the 5G, they use those services for the fires in LA to provide tethered drone wireless services in those destruction zones of the fire.
Yeah.
I seen something flash up on the news. It showed one of those tethered drones providing wireless service once the neighborhoods were wiped out. So pretty amazing how you go back and then go forward, and those are becoming everyday parts of our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, we talked about Marty and some of these other figures that we had that are big innovators, big names, making big impressions and differences in the industry. But then I was equally excited to talk to a lot of the newer, younger innovators in the industry as well. People like Samuel Vandeveld, who's, here's a young PhD student who starts this company that's using ultra wideband and NFC and all these technologies in our phones and in the environment to do things like track cows and figure out, when cows are ready to start producing milk for farmers, or people like Doug Kirkpatrick with Eridan, who, they're developing the latest and greatest chipsets that are being used for the future of smaller, lighter, faster, less power 6G cell sites. So So those individuals to sort of glimpse into the crystal ball of what the future holds and what our, the future sort of movers and shakers of the industry might be was also very fulfilling.
Yeah, and so, it brings us to a point, today of like, we could talk about the future of 5G. We see different projects, what 5G has brought, is kind of interesting. When I look at the landscape today, um, did I think initially before 5G got here that it was going to be a technology that changed everything? I don't think that we're 100% deployed at the max capabilities of what 5G brings yet today. We still have a ways to go there.
Yeah, we do. I'd say we're about halfway through the 5G life cycle. You have another, 5 years of what's coming. It would be called 5G Advanced, and I know that from a lot of our listeners giving us feedback, people that we talk to in our daily lives, being in the industry, probably one of the things that I hear the most about is disappointment in 5G, and 5G wasn't what we thought it was going to be. And I think part of what we learned through the guests we've had on the podcast and the topics that we've tackled is that 5G really was as much of an impact for the carriers themselves as it was for the consumer, right? We're in an industry where, what consumers pay for cellular service is is getting cheaper and cheaper all the time. If you look at related to inflation and consumer price index, we pay less today for cellular service than we paid 20, 25 years ago on a cost adjusted basis. And so, when you start thinking about that, it starts making you realize that, um, some of the innovations that are out there have to help these technology companies and the carriers be able to do things more efficiently. And that's really, I think, where 5G's probably made the biggest difference so far. But there's a lot to come still, and there's a lot of use cases like private wireless that you and I have made our fair share of predictions that were probably wrong around, whether we see private wireless impact us today or not. And I think a lot of those things are still pending and still, on the surface of what we might see as consumers.
Yeah, and I do think in that side, private wireless, yeah, private networks, that is starting to manifest itself in owning your own fiber and your dark fiber and the different pieces of. So how it transforms into the future. We're doing projects, for a super large financial company trying to build their own private network. We haven't touched on the wireless part of it, but they are, trying to figure out how do they get the most. And it all comes to the next revolution, which is AI. How do these enterprises capture all their data cost effectively to be
Mhm.
able to build their own models and use that data?
And
Um,
and you and I've talked about this. How do we also solve the problem of energy and power that's going to be
yeah,
demanded by all of this? Like every one of those AI processors takes more power, just like we had the same thing with crypto and a lot of those things. And the world around us is going to be more and more demanding of the grid. And we talked a lot about that, but we never really dove into it with some of the technologists around there. And I think what this all sort of speaks to for me, and that was probably one of my big learnings in the podcast, was we are smack dab in the middle of all these technologies converging at the same time and impacting each other. And just when you start thinking you've touched all of the topics, there's more that pop up and that are related to something you just talked about. So that's probably been my biggest learning and takeaway from the podcast is just there's always more to learn.
yeah. And, with that being said, now we're seeing commercials on satellite cellular combination networks, like we talked about with what Elon was doing with Starlink. Now Verizon has a commercial and T-Mobile has one coming out, and this is converging together. What does that look like? We really don't know. And that's exciting for us. Have been in the industry for a while. Of where are we going? You know, what will the device look like? Apple's been in the news a lot. The iPhone's been definitely a game changer. I don't want to discount Android, but I am truly an Apple user. So I could speak to that of like, what are they going to eventually do? The iPhone's been similarity the same over and over. Now we got way better cameras. Eventually you get to a point where how much more camera do you need? I mean,
Right. Right.
so super exciting. One of the things you just mentioned, I think is critical, for me, I'm sure you, is the humility that I learned in the podcast, right? Me being on the physical infrastructure, whether it's management or network engineering or implementation side of it, I thought I knew a lot about the industry. And what I've really learned from the podcast is I don't know anything about the industry. There's so many other fascinating facets to it, whether it, to your point, whether it's chips or whether it's FirstNet. That was super fascinating podcast about life safety and how important it is in today's society. And all of these other little facets that I never really thought about because I was just, I'm a builder, and I dealt with, although that we didn't really ever construct, we managed tons of projects across the country. And how do you, continue to build the network to be resilient and to pass this type of data that we're talking about. I don't know if you've seen anything from the Super Bowl, but it was a crazy amount of data that flowed through that thing.
Yeah, every year sets new records. It's like every year for the last 8, 9, 10 years, there's always a new record on data usage. Some of it cellular, some of it Wi-Fi. And to your point a little bit ago, now we're also going to start seeing data offload onto non-terrestrial space networks that we've talked about. So it never ceases to amaze. And then I think we also touched on, I think, some really important current events as well throughout time. There was things that would pop up that we'd react to, whether that be economic, right? We experienced during the span of our podcast some of the highest highs in the wireless telecom industry in terms of spending and innovation. And then, here we are on the back end of some of the lowest lows of just those as quickly as those costs and things have gone up, that they've come down in terms of spending and how it's impacted the people in this world that build these networks and take care of these networks and how it's effective innovation. So it's amazing in 3.5 years how much the world has changed.
So dramatically. And, I think a little throw out to our fellow workers out there and the people building this infrastructure. They're in a battle right now. They're in a battle with trying to get better pricing to pay great wages for this dangerous work. Climbing towers is still one of those dangerous professions in the U.S. I know it's done a little different from when you and I started, but nonetheless, this industry is under constraints with labor and the cost of labor. And so we do appreciate our fellow guy, our people out there building the network, getting up, going through the weather, making it happen. Do the projects look the same? It may look a little different, but they're still building macros. They're still doing modifications. They're still putting fiber in, still doing tons of rooftops. I mean, they're eventually still spending a lot of CapEx. It might not be to your point, but they're still spending it, and we still have a ways to go with those. And I definitely want to pay homage to those listeners. I mean, it's where you and I started. We were building cell sites. There's tons of guys out there. There's new people coming into the industry. It has been a really rewarding industry. And just because we're going away in the podcast doesn't mean that we're going away as people. We're still going to be active participants in our industry and really not only participants, but advocates for those individuals building those networks.
Yeah. I mean, to that note, that's a great segue. Tell the listeners what's going on with Wayne and what's going on with Vertex, and as much as we've said, so much has changed in the last 3.5 years. So has the work that you and I do in this industry. So give our listeners an update.
Yeah, it's a great one. Yeah. So Vertex, Vertex Innovations, we finished 21 years this year in the industry, and really since 2003, the industry's changed dramatically. And we have some really major accomplishments that we've achieved, 35,000 projects across the U.S. Pretty much in every state at some point, we've touched a network somewhere to provide service across the country. As we look at our future moving forward, we still have, we still will do our carrier components. We've been a big advocate of, I'll just say it, Verizon for 21 years. What a ride it's been to support and help those people accomplish their goal. They built an amazing network over 21 years as I've been involved. We've built tons of modifications and macros and we tried to come up with a number on how many miles of fiber. It's just, it would just be arbitrary to do. But as we move forward into, our next 10 years in business, we look at, a little bit of a different approach for us. One, how do we take all these things that we've done for this super large carrier and do it for other enterprise clients? And so we've developed a vertical in the company that's going to take care of, it's called agency construction management, where we go out and do different projects on data centers. We have 20 years of data center experience. Right now with AI, the data center boom is off the wall. I mean, cumulative annual revenue growth is somewhere like 38%. It's even larger than wireless in the data center space. So how do we take all of our knowledge of building billions of dollars worth of data center projects and take it over to this AI enterprise in the world? Another part for Vertex is we stand it up and put a lot of investment into our MSP, our managed services for construction software and managed services along that. That team is fully stood up. We offer different products in as far as like pro core support services and how do you make the most of those software investments. We've just released a new version, and you'll be proud of this, of Active Oversight, our quality management software. We have a fix for intermittent connectivity in the field where you can use your mobile with or without coverage, not no coverage, but intermittent coverage, which is a real pain. And as we see work in the mobile environment, more instead of downloading, it's uploading. So we need upload speeds to be there in order to move large photos and stuff. So Vertex has a really promising, outlook as we move forward. Yeah, there's the carrier component, there's the data center component, and then there's the software on how do we utilize the tools to help our people deliver more projects more efficiently and become a tech-enabled organization, so that we're being more efficient with our time as we are tasked to get more done with less people. But yeah, that's kind of where we are. We also are excited. We have a new launch on February the 19th, 20th. We're relaunching a new website. We think we've kind of got out of our acronym world that I've lived in for 20 years and put some of these services and projects that we've done in layman's terms so you can understand and how we can help, do things different and we grow the company. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at. We're transitioning and changing as an organization and pretty excited about the growth.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I like you, what I do on a day-to-day basis is grown and evolved. I'm still working independently, helping clients, doing a lot of advisory work and helping small businesses scale to larger, medium size and larger businesses. But what I've really enjoyed is, and I don't think it's coincidental, as part of diving back into my engineering roots as part of this podcast, is I've dug back into my engineering roots in terms of some of the day-to-day work that I've been doing. I feel, very blessed to be able to do that. Last year, I had the opportunity to work on behalf of the NTIA and their initiative to spend taxpayer funds to help keep the United States first and foremost the leader in the world when it comes to 5G and 6G and Open RAN, which is some new standards that are allowing carriers and private networks to have more options in terms of technology innovators. Some of the people like we've had on our podcast, like Eridan, they were beneficiaries publicly, they can say so, of some of these funds that the FCC and the NTIA has doled out. And so as part of that, it's been great because I'm now getting to be involved as an engineer again on what's the future of 5G, what's the future of 6G look like. And it's exciting. It's fun to see all the great innovations that are coming out of big and small companies. There's a lot of academia involvement as well, more academia than I've ever seen in my career in terms of United States public universities and private universities contributing directly to the technology we're all going to be using tomorrow. So that's what I've been doing and will continue to do throughout this year and continue to help clients and some of which are listeners of the podcast. So it's fun to run into people that are listeners as well and hear from them what moved them and what they liked about what we're doing.
Yeah. It just gives me a moment to pause and let all of our listeners know that hey, I'm super thankful.
Yeah.
And, I say that with humility because I've learned so much from, in a short amount of time.
And I have to say personally, I'm thankful and thank you, Wayne, for, this was all your idea originally. You and I would spend hours on the phone all the time just talking about all these types of things. And you're like, hey, we should let's record it. Let's make a podcast out of it. So thank you for putting yourself out there and convincing me to put myself out there, because we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. And so much so that 5G guys is going to be moving on, but I'm not. I love it so much. I'm going to continue doing this. So I've
Right
got a new
on.
podcast that I'm starting, and you should be able to find it now if you want to check it out. It's called Connectivity Evolution. So it's the evolution of technology and how it's helping humans stay connected. So Connectivity Evolution, you can find it same places you find 5G guys, and our old episodes will still be out there. So, but yeah, I'm super thankful for you and how you've kind of mentored me and helped me grow as an individual through the podcast. So thank you.
Yeah, likewise. I love the name. I mean, it really is a good path and a good name to move things forward, because we're going to see all types of evolution in our industry.
Oh,
And it's exciting that you have a good voice. You've always been a great educator, especially at Kiowa, Colorado Wireless Association. Great you've done amazing things for that community, and we both know the community needs it.
yeah,
We need that advocacy out there. Otherwise, we get regulated from big corporate down to here. And so, thank you for
yeah.
that. Well, I mean, for me, I think signing off is surreal. You might see a podcast, you might not. I might be a guest, I might not. I will be out there advocating and building the next, infrastructure. I do love that. I do love my role here at Vertex. It's been a great run. Hopefully I can continue in another 10 years. If you want to find us out there, we're pretty easy on the web, vertex-us.com. You can find me on X at Vertex Innovate, on LinkedIn, Vertex Innovations. I always reach out.
Thanks, Wayne. Nice job. Congratulations on the future. That it sounds bright for you guys. So thanks again. Couldn't have done it without you guys. And signing off for the last episode of 5G guys. Take care.
God bless and take care.
Thanks for listening to the 5G Guys. For more resources and to connect with Dan and Wayne, check out their website at 5gguys.com. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that follow button and share this episode with your friends and family.